2 years ago when we did event camp in Europe. We did this just outside of London, and Brandt was one of the speakers that came on, and he just kept my attention for the whole, I think he had about 45 minutes. We've given him half an hour slot. He would be coming in live right now. He would do what Graham's just done, but unfortunately he did have something that did crop up at the last moment that he couldn't get out of. But we're able to bring him to you because we did say as a stipulation of bringing speakers in for this particular event camp. We've had 9 remote speakers, and we knew that if the technology didn't kind of work, we still needed to have something to put on the screens. So he's done a really nice pre-recorded video. That's my opinion. I saw it this morning for the first time, and that was he slides in between his he slides in and out of his slides and his graphics. So even though he's not physically with us in this room, as Graham was, you will still get to know who he is. So Brandt Krueger is ready for us right now, and he's there and he's good to go. Thank you, Martin.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today at Event Camp Middle East. It is an honor and a privilege to be once again part of an event camp. I think I've spoken to 3 of them now. I really believe in the event camp model. I think it's something that helps foster innovation and creativity in our profession. So I'm a big fan of the event camp model, and I want to say thank you to Paul and to folks like Josh at Show Gizmo and the folks at Be There Global for really being a supporter of event camp and helping to foster that innovation. I've been asked to talk to you today about one of my favorite topics, and that is event technology and the trends and innovations that are coming down the way. So it's really exciting for me to be joining you today. I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is that there are a lot of really cool things, I think, that are going to be released this year. We're going to start seeing a lot of really interesting, really innovative products being released this year and into the next. The bad news is that I think for 2014, we're not actually going to see any of these things really catch on and catch fire and take the industry by storm. At the beginning of the year, my general prediction for 2014 was going to be that we're just going to continue to see kind of the slow and steady trends that we have been seeing over the course of the last couple of years. So we're going to see a general growth in technology as opposed to any kind of hockey stick growth that you might expect. So we're going to continue to see growth in things like event apps. It seems like everybody and their dog has an event app these days. So what I do think is going to happen is that we are going to see continued growth in the use of apps at our events, kind of replacing paper as much as possible. But I do start to think that we're going to see some people emerging as the winners. I think whoever figures out that it's not going to be about feature set, that it's going to be about actually providing some kind of benefit to audience members. So these ones that are going to win aren't going to win because they have the most features. They're going to win because they're the best at what they do, and they're going to provide real tangible benefits to the people that are using their apps. I think we're also going to see the continued growth of event management apps. That is the actual applications and software as a service that people are using to plan and manage their events. I think we're going to continue to see slow, steady growth in the use of these types of services. And then finally, I think we're going to see continued growth in the area of recording and live streaming. So first off, I mean not just these types of hybrid events, but actually more lean back and on demand. So the first steps that a lot of companies are taking in this realm is to just simply broadcast the events that they're already doing to an on-demand audience or to a live audience. So not necessarily trying to get that interactive experience, but let's just get it out there and get it on demand as perhaps a first step into talking about more of an interactive and hybrid model. There's a lot of these companies are out there. MediaSite has been my kind of old standby. I'm hearing good things about a company called Livestream, and then of course we've got the sponsors today, Be There Global. All of these companies are out there doing great things in the live streaming and hybrid audience space, offering more and more ways for the hybrid audience to interact with the actual people there in the room, asking questions, those kinds of things. And so we're going to see that continued trend of actually having those hybrid and interactive events. Now, thirdly, I think we're going to see an increase and that steady trend again of remote speakers, much like what we're doing today. We're going to see more and more of those over the course of 2014 as people realize the enormous amount of cost that can be saved by bringing in a speaker remotely. So we're going to see an uptick in the use of Google Hangouts. That's becoming more and more the platform of choice for a lot of people, especially when it comes to having multiple participants. Prior to this year, Skype has really been the platform of choice for one-to-one calls, but unfortunately we're hearing more and more reports of Skype getting really buggy, of there getting to be lag and interference in the line. So I don't know if that has anything to do with them being sold to Microsoft or if just something's going on with the platform itself, but we're hearing more and more reports of Skype being buggy. Now, there's a newcomer on the scene that I think Tim Chapman has already mentioned, and that's WebRTC, and that's one we're definitely going to be keeping our eyes on. It is an open-sourced, real-time communication that really is giving you browser-to-browser communication. So we're not talking so much about a program that you would run on your computer, but it actually runs in the browser, and that enables you for real-time voice calling, video chat, file sharing, all without any kind of plugins. It's actually kind of part of the spec of the web, or at least that's the goal. Unfortunately, it's currently only available for Chrome, Firefox, and Opera, but if you have any of those browsers available, it doesn't matter whether you have a Mac or a PC, you would be able to load it up in Chrome, and you'd be able to use those tools to communicate to each other. So definitely something to keep an eye on that's coming down the way that we are going to start to see, I think, creeping in and used more and more. We're also seeing an increase in the use of built-in video conferencing technology. And so by that I mean the things that used to be Cisco was kind of the big headliner in that market with their Cisco telepresence service, which is basically video conferencing. Another newcomer, relative newcomer in that market would be Logitech's LifeSize, seeing a lot more of those being built-in fixed installations of video conferencing systems. But we are seeing some, again, newcomers starting to come to the market at a much lower price point. Google just recently introduced their Chromebox, which is a package of hardware designed to be able to hook up to pretty much any modern television that gives you kind of instant video conferencing in a box. And that comes with an actual Chrome box and a microphone and a camera and everything that you need to just set up a video conferencing system. What's interesting about that is that they came in at $1,000 for the package, which seems exorbitantly high to me based on the hardware that it comes with. And then in addition to that, there is actually an annual fee. The only thing I can think of is that Google thought, well, if we price it too low, corporations aren't going to take it seriously. So I think they priced it right around that $1,000 mark just so that they'd be taken seriously. But for companies that don't necessarily have to have Cisco or want to pay that $1,000, we're also seeing an increase in companies actually going out and buying an Xbox One, because the Xbox One comes with the Kinect camera system that attaches to it. So they might just want to be able to play Xbox in their conference room, but it does have the side benefit of being able to actually connect via Skype using this Xbox One hardware. Again, very off the shelf, plug and play, easy to use, and much cheaper compared to these high-end video conferencing systems. So it can be an inexpensive way to get kind of the same effect as having these built-ins. Now, why does this matter in our context? Why do we care that more people are putting in built-in video conferencing systems? And the answer is that they then want to use that infrastructure, use those systems as the broadcast point for remote speakers. So we as AV people and production people need to know about these systems, need to know how to tap into them so that we can then broadcast that signal out to the live event. And how do we then get that signal back into those systems so that the remote speaker can see what's going on in the event? And that's why that trend is actually kind of important. Now, you'll notice that none of this technology is particularly new. All of these, like I say, are just going to be progressing on the trend that they already are. And I don't anticipate any major increases in any of them. None of them are particularly new, but there is always a chance for a surprise. Like I say, there are going to be some products that drop this year. I don't anticipate any of them taking off, but there's always a chance for a surprise. And just one that came up recently was actually an app called Crowd Mics. My Twitter feed blew up about 2 weeks ago with people saying, have you heard about Crowd Mics? Have you seen Crowd Mics? Have you tried Crowd Mics? Now, this app has only been around at this time about 3 weeks, so it's very new. They're still working out some of the kinks. They've actually had a couple of revisions already go through the App Store, so they're really working on it fast. I had a chance to sit down and interview the guys. They seem like great guys. And what I love about this app is that it stemmed from an actual audience experience. They were sitting in the audience, and they were having trouble getting mics around to audience members, and they kind of looked at each other and said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually just speak into our smartphones? And so that's what this app does. It actually does only 3 things. And I'm actually kind of a fan of apps that keep things simple. So it does 3 things. It actually does basic polling. You have the ability to text in a message if you don't actually want to speak in front of the audience. And then there's this built-in microphone capability. So I think there's probably still some bugs to work out just because it's new. But if these guys can get this thing nailed down and bulletproof, I think it's really going to take off. So there always is a chance that somebody's going to surprise you with something that you didn't know is coming. That's why it's tough to make predictions in the technology space especially. Before I tell you, though, the things that I think are going to be coming down the line, closer to 2015, 2016, I want to take a moment because we did have some questions that came in regarding event technology. And the first one was, they said, I love using my pad and pencil at events. Do I really need a shiny new gadget? And the answer is absolutely not. I love technology, but I would rather see someone using old technology really well than I would to see someone using new technology really poorly. So it's very important to know your audience and to know, is this new technology going to make their experience better? Or in the case of event management apps, is this actually going to make your life easier? Are we going to be able to use this technology to make our experience better? So you have to ask yourself, what are the tangible benefits to my attendees if I do implement this technology? I think, unfortunately, a lot of planners come in and they want to turn to technology to add zest to their meeting, that they feel like the meeting's getting a little old, a little boring. What have you got that's new and shiny that's going to make my meeting a little peppier, a little more interesting? And I think that's the wrong way to approach it, because that tells me if your meeting is getting old, if it's getting dry, you might need to address your content, or the style of meeting that you're putting on, or how long it is, or what you're asking of your attendees over the course of those few days. And just adding a little bit of technology can't fix that. It might be a Band-Aid on the problem, but it's certainly not going to fix the core issue. So make sure that you're checking with your audience that they're actually getting a tangible benefit out of that. Another question that we got was one that I get all the time, and that is, where do I go to find the newest technology? And the answer to that is what I do is that I don't follow necessarily, I'm not trying to find sources for event technology in the industry. I follow Silicon Valley sources or just tech sources in general from around the world. So I actually listen to a lot of podcasts. I am a big fan of those pre-recorded downloadable podcasts that you can subscribe to on iTunes. I subscribe to probably 14 or 15 podcasts that come out on a weekly basis. I actually cheat. I listen to them on high speed so I can get through them quickly. But most of those have nothing to do with our industry. Most of them are technology-based shows. They have to do with Windows or Mac or Android or tech in general. All of those things are things that I listen to on a weekly basis to try and get an idea of what might be coming down the way. So that's my suggestion, and I've heard other people kind of in the event technology world say the same thing, which is to actively seek out information coming from the tech world as opposed to the event world. Now, the third question that came in was, well, won't a supplier just sell me their products? I mean, where can I find impartial advice if that's at all possible? And the answer is it is all possible. What you need to do is you need to check with your peer networks. So whether that's associations, if you're a member of an association like MPI or ISIS, or if you're like me and you're kind of in the unassociation of social media. I hang out with a lot of people online via social media that are in the business that aren't necessarily part of the associations of the world. So find that peer group, find that group of people that do what we do and hang out with them and ask them, have you ever had a chance to try crowd mics? Have you ever had a chance to try this technology or that technology? And then take advantage of situations like event camp. So go to industry events that are more tech forward, are more pushing innovation and trying new things. So try and seek those out as well. And then finally, look inside your client base to see if there might be a client, or if you're a corporate planner, maybe there's a division that is more adventurous, that is more willing to take chances. We have a major financial client that you would never think, you usually think financial is going very slow, never taking chances, but they have a group within that it really wants to take a chance. And so they are actually going to be doing a full-scale test of crowd mics this week with 200 to 300 iPads out in the audience, all going to give this a try at full scale, even though we haven't really done full testing at full scale. And they're willing to take that risk, and I guarantee you, if it works great, they're going to recommend it to every single other division in that company. So find those opportunities to beta test the technology, and then be sure to get honest feedback as to whether or not it worked for people. So afterwards, be sure to go around and ask them, especially in person, because you're more likely to get honest feedback. How did it work for you? Did it work for you? Did it make it easier for you? Did you like it not having to wait for microphones to come out to you in the audience? So be sure and get that honest feedback when it comes to testing your technology out to see if it actually does, again, have that tangible benefit for you or your audience. Now, there's some specific trends that I'd like to talk about that are coming down for 2015. And the first one is one that's already been talked about a little bit, so I won't go into too much depth, and that is iBeacons. So I think both Tim and Josh have already touched on it, but just in case you're just tuning in now, iBeacons are the Apple-branded versions of these Bluetooth, low-energy Bluetooth devices. And the easy way to think about them is that they are an indoor positioning system. So just like GPS is kind of the global positioning system that can find you anywhere in the world, these little low-power devices can help locate you within an environment. They are capable of going outside, but just it's easier to think of it that way. So that you're going to locate a person's position at an event, and then it's going to be able to deliver targeted information to that person. Now, the potential uses for this are pretty cool. You could use it for navigation to help get you through a trade show floor. You could use it for gaming. So you could actually use it. You have to go to this spot, and then you get a clue from the beacon, and then you go to this spot, and you get another clue for the next clue for the next beacon, and you have to make your way through through an expo hall or through a park that's next door to your venue. My concern about iBeacons, though, is that Apple especially seems to be pushing it as a sales tool. And so I'm concerned that it's going to be immediately overused by advertisers, so that when I walk into a store, it's going to try and sell me pants, or it's going to tell me that there's a drink offer or something like that. And so my worry is that so many people are going to get bombarded by this, by turning it on, that they're going to turn it off. And then that's going to make it very difficult to get people to start turning it back on again for our events and meetings. So I think it's an interesting technology. If anybody can make it cool by sticking an eye in front of it, Apple can do it. But I am concerned that it might get overused at the offset by advertisers. Now, the next major section of technology that I'm looking forward to are the wearables. And the number one king in this area right now, at least the one that's the most talked about, is Google Glass. Mainly because it was kind of the first wearable to make a big splash, for better or for worse. And as a glasses wearer, I really love the idea that I could just look up and get my notifications up in my glasses without having to pick up my phone or even look at a smartwatch that we'll talk about in a second. But the problem is really the cost and the fact that it's extremely limited in functionality. It's got a very short battery life, and yeah, it's great. You can take pictures and you can get notifications, but I haven't seen a lot of compelling uses for Google Glass yet. And I think it's going to take it going mainstream before we start to see the types of innovation that are really going to be useful for meetings and events. Now, the other big wearable that's just on the edge of becoming popular is the smartwatch. Most people are really holding their breath for Apple to come out with a smartwatch. That keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Apple is perfectly happy to let other people make mistakes in the smartwatch realm so that they can then come out and just look like the best product in the history of the world. So they're perfectly happy to just sit back and wait, and I don't think we're even going to see it. It's not on the market, at least until 2015 at the earliest. Samsung's offerings have been lackluster at best. The front runner, for the truly nerdy crowd, has been the Pebble Steel. But all of these are still pretty big slabs to wear on your wrist. They're big square slabs of metal, and they're just really not all that terribly attractive. But what's interesting is that just this week, Google announced Android Wear. Now, Android Wear is actually a stripped-down version of Android that's designed specifically for wearables. And not just wearables such as smartwatches. It's actually designed for all shapes and sizes, including things that might not actually even have a screen. The videos for these things show checking in at the airport and making dinner reservations, mainly on smartwatches, and you talk to it and it opens your garage. But I think what's interesting is this idea that they're trying to make an Android platform that's specifically designed for wearables. It's a very stripped-down version that's going to be mainly voice-enabled, so that you can just talk to, sensor-enabled, so that it can gather data on your health and things like that. And I think more importantly, when it does come to the wearables, they gave it flexibility on screen size. So we're seeing this newly released Moto 360. It actually hasn't been released yet, but they've released the advertising for it, and it actually looks quite nice, mainly because it's round. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how engineers handle the fact that it's got a round screen, but it looks gorgeous, and we'll have to see how much it costs when it comes out, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions about what it's going to be capable of, but it certainly looks good. Now, the next interesting thing that Google dropped on us this year already is the Project Tango. And Project Tango was announced in February this year, and what it is an ultra prototype smartphone that actually has built-in sensors that are geared towards gathering three-dimensional data. So what's interesting about this is that they're giving it to high-end software manufacturers to see what they can do with it. And already they're seeing proof of concept where you can just take this phone and kind of point it around the room as you walk around the room, and it builds an actual three-dimensional map of the room, including exactly what it looks like and the ability to go in and measure distances within that map. So you can imagine the possibilities of this type of device for venues and planners and vendors and production companies. I mean, just imagine being able to walk in a room with your smartphone, map it all out on the site visit, then go back to your office and gather all the measurements that you need in order to successfully pull off your event. So this is really interesting technology that's coming down the way. Again, not until 2015 or so at the earliest, but I can't wait for that ability to come. Now, if you combine the technologies that we just talked about, the idea of Google Glass and the idea of this kind of 3D room mapping software, I think we're going to be seeing a real change and advancement in the realm of augmented reality. Now, by augmented reality, I'm not talking about virtual reality. I'm talking about taking things and layering it over our existing reality, especially through eyewear. That the possibilities for that, I think, are really phenomenal. You think about navigating a trade show floor where you could just tap your glasses and say, where do I find booth 315? And you just look down and virtual arrows point the way, down the carpet so that you can just follow the arrows to get to that booth. And then the options down the way for promotional opportunities, I think, are really exciting. So imagine going into a venue and you put on the glasses and you're walking through the room, looking around in the room, and it shows you, what it's going to look like in a round setup versus what it's going to look like in a classroom setup, what it might look like with different centerpiece options or with different linen options, all through augmented reality so that the actual room itself is completely empty, but you can see as you're doing your site visit what it's going to look like when you're actually in there for your event months before it actually happens. So I'm really excited by these technologies that are coming down the way, and I'm looking forward to being able to use them and experiment with them. But there are a few things that I'm not seeing coming down the way. So I'd like to conclude with a couple of things that I'd like to see, what I want to see. Now, the first of those, it would be better or easier handwriting recognition. Now, as we already talked about in the question, is there anything wrong with having a pad and paper? Absolutely not. And in fact, I always have a pad of paper and a pen with me on every desk that I own because it is the fastest way to jot something down. It's the fastest way to write down those notes. And although we've had handwriting recognition and the ability to write on tablets for quite some time, none of them really feel like it truly works, that truly captures that experience. It feels like work. It feels like you could train yourself to write on these devices. But I'm really hoping that somebody is able to figure out a smooth and easy way to capture handwriting and then turn it into text that can be used and edited later. The other thing that we need, as far as I'm concerned, to push innovation forward in our industry is ubiquitous internet. I think it took taking home and businesses adding internet access to really get to a critical mass to help make the web explode in the way that it did 10 years ago. And I think it took mobile phones hitting a critical mass to get texting to explode. And texting really was the direct birth of Twitter. The original idea of Twitter was, I wish there was a way that I could text all of my friends what I'm doing right now. And so that's why it's got such a short character length, because it was based on texting. The idea came from texting. And it took smartphones hitting critical mass to get that explosion of amazing apps that make our lives more productive, or at the very least entertaining every day. So I think it's going to take venue internet to hit critical mass, where we have to stop seeing these, $3,000 to $5,000 bills for 2 hours worth of internet access. We need to see fast, inexpensive internet access in all of our event venues. Once that happens, then we'll really be able to see what the capabilities and inventive ideas might come out of this industry. I think it's going to take ubiquitous internet access to really spark innovation and really show us what we're going to be capable of doing with event technology in the future. So that's it. I want to thank you again for taking the time to be with me today. And if any of you have any questions at all about any of the technologies I've talked about here, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm Brandt Krueger on pretty much every social network. So I'm at Brandt Krueger on Twitter. I'm plus Brandt Krueger on Google+. Feel free to check out any of the websites. And feel free to tune into the Event Alley Show podcast. We broadcast live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 5 p.m. or 1700 Universal Time. So feel free to join us. We're there every week, and then those shows are available on demand afterwards. And you can hear all about the latest meeting and event trends every week. Thank you so much for joining me.